The mockery. The chamber of the alien council was filled with cold blue light. Tall figures with scaled skin and glowing eyes sat around a circular table. Their armor shone like metal fire, and their voices echoed in the vast hall. They were the rulers of 1,000 star systems, proud and arrogant, and in the center of the hall stood one single human, Commander Elias Kane. The aliens looked at him the way predators look at prey. Some laughed in deep, rumbling tones. Others clicked their jaws in mock amusement. To them, this human was nothing but a fragile creature of flesh and bone. One of the council members leaned forward. His voice was sharp, cutting through the silence. "Is this what the humans send us? A single body wrapped in weak skin? We thought you were desperate, but this is pathetic." Laughter filled the room. The sound was heavy, echoing against the stone walls like thunder. Elias did not move. His eyes stayed fixed on the warlord at the far end of the chamber. His calmness only made the aliens more curious. The warlord, taller than the rest, rose from his seat. His armor was black as night, decorated with bones of creatures from conquered worlds. His eyes glowed with cruel fire as he looked down at the human. "Your species is weak," the warlord declared. "You break, you bleed, you die too easily. The galaxy has no place for such fragile life. Surrender your world, human, and we may let a few of you live as slaves." The aliens roared with laughter again. Some slammed their claws on the table. The air was filled with the sound of mockery. But Elias remained still. His silence was heavy, almost unnatural. He stood as if the laughter did not exist. One of the younger aliens slammed his hand against the table. "Speak, human. Do you not hear the warlord? You are nothing. Say your last words before your species is erased." Elias finally moved. Slowly, carefully, he lifted his head. His face carried no fear. His voice, when it came, was calm, almost quiet. Yet every corner of the chamber heard it. "You think weakness is our curse," he said softly, "but you are wrong. Weakness is our weapon." The room fell silent for a moment. The alien stared at him, confused. Then another burst of mocking laughter shook the hall. "A weapon? You call your fragile bodies a weapon?" sneered one of the generals. "You humans have no fleets, no armies strong enough to face us. What can weakness do?" Elias did not argue. His hand stayed behind his back, his eyes unblinking. The warlord narrowed his eyes, suddenly curious. Something about the human's composure felt strange. "Show us then," the warlord said, his voice cold and commanding. "Show us this so-called weapon of yours. Entertain us before we crush your world." Elias gave the faintest of nods. "I will show you," he said simply. The aliens leaned forward. Their mocking grins returned. They expected a trick, maybe a desperate plea, maybe empty human words about courage. But Elias's calm face carried no desperation. There was something heavier, something dangerous in his silence. For a moment, the warlord felt the faintest shiver crawl across his scaled skin. He pushed it away and stood taller, hiding the unease. The laughter of his council continued. But in his heart, the first seed of doubt had been planted. Elias Kane, one fragile human, stood in the heart of an empire that ruled the stars. He was surrounded by power, arrogance, and cruelty. And yet, his steady gaze carried something none of them could understand. It was not pride. It was not fear. It was history, and soon that history would terrify them all. The challenge. The laughter of the alien council slowly faded, replaced by a tense silence. The warlord's burning eyes locked on the human commander. He wanted to see this so-called weapon of weakness. "Very well, human," the warlord said, his voice like thunder rolling across the chamber. "You will show us. Prove your words, and perhaps I will grant you the mercy of a quick death. Fail, and your species will suffer until the last child screams." The council hissed in approval. Their sharp teeth glimmered under the blue light. They were eager, like hunters circling prey before the kill. Elias Kane remained still. His boots echoed as he stepped forward into the center of the chamber. The floor was carved with the symbols of countless conquered worlds. He stood on them, as if he carried no fear of joining their fate. "I will not argue with you," Elias said calmly. "I will not trade insults nor beg for mercy. You called my people weak. You laughed at us. Then you will see the truth with your own eyes." His voice was steady, but it cut through the hall like a blade. The aliens leaned closer. Some grinned, others frowned. They had seen countless species break before them. But this human, he did not tremble. He did not lower his head. The warlord tilted his head. "And what truth will you show me? That humans cry when they bleed? That you shatter under war and fire?" Elias looked directly into the warlord's glowing eyes. "No," he said softly. "I will show you why humanity does not die, even when it should." A murmur spread across the council. The younger warriors sneered, whispering to each other in disbelief. One of them slammed his clawed hand against the table. "Lies. Your fleets are dust. Your weapons are ancient toys. You dare to stand in front of us and speak of survival." But the elder aliens did not laugh so quickly. They watched the human carefully. They felt the weight in his words. There was no boasting, no desperation, only certainty. The warlord's grin returned, but it was thinner now, less sure. He leaned forward on his throne, his voice low and dangerous. "Then show us, human. Show us this truth that terrifies you so little. But remember, once you do, there is no turning back. Your world will either kneel or burn." Elias nodded once. "I am ready." The chamber dimmed as alien technicians activated the great hollow screen that hung above the council. The light flickered, waiting for input. The aliens leaned forward, expecting empty words and broken pride. But Elias did not flinch. He raised his hand toward the console before him, his eyes still locked on the warlord. "You wanted to see our weakness," he said. "Then you will see our history." The chamber grew colder. For the first time, the laughter had vanished. The aliens did not know why, but a shadow passed through their hearts as the human began his demonstration. And in that silence, the first tremors of fear were born. The reveal. The chamber darkened as the great hollow screen flickered to life. The blue light washed over the alien council, and for a moment, the silence was so deep that even their breaths felt heavy. All eyes fixed on the human commander. Elias Kane placed his hand firmly on the console. His voice was calm, steady, but the weight behind it pressed on every ear in the chamber. "You called us weak," he said. "You laughed at us because we bleed, because our lives are short, because we do not have armored skin or endless fleets. Now, look at what weakness made us endure." The first image filled the hollow screen. A city burning, towers collapsing, in flames. The aliens leaned forward, their glowing eyes reflecting fire. Soldiers in primitive armor fought desperately in ruined streets while civilians fled through smoke. "This was our world in war," Elias continued. "Nations rose against nations. We tore our own homes apart. Millions died in days." The aliens chuckled at first. To them this was weakness indeed, creatures destroying themselves without need of an enemy. But then, the images shifted. The hollow screen showed mushroom clouds blooming across the earth. Skies turned black. Entire landscapes melted into wastelands. Radiation storms swept across continents. Men and women crawled out from craters, their bodies broken, their cities gone. The alien laughter stopped. The silence grew heavier. "These," Elias said, his voice as cold as steel, "are our scars. We destroyed ourselves again and again. But every time we returned, we rebuilt cities. We raised children in the ashes. We grew stronger, harder, unyielding." The screen shifted again. Images of plagues, streets filled with the dead. Whole towns vanished overnight. But then came survivors, faces thin, eyes hollow, carrying on with nothing but will. The younger aliens whispered nervously. They kill their own world," one said, "and still survive." The older ones frowned, their scaled jaws tight. They had conquered species that surrendered at the first touch of fire, at the first fall of cities. But this? A species that burned its own world and still lived? It was unnatural. Elias's voice grew louder now, his calmness cutting deeper. You think war frightens us? We were born in it. You think destruction will break us? We lived it. We are the species that has died 1,000 times yet still walks forward. The images shifted once more. Burning ruins gave way to rebuilt skylines, shattered streets filled with children laughing, broken nations rising again with stronger armies. The alien council sat frozen. The warlord, still towering at the far end of the chamber, narrowed his eyes. His grin was gone. In its place was something rare, unease. This is your truth, Elias whispered. You see weakness in us because we bleed. But do you not understand? The blood is proof. Proof that no matter how many times we fall, no matter how often we destroy ourselves, we come back stronger. Can you say the same for your empire? The hollow screen flickered, then went dark. The silence that followed was unbearable. For the first time in the Council's history, the aliens could not laugh. The fear grows. The chamber remained silent long after the hollow screen went dark. The alien council sat frozen, their glowing eyes reflecting nothing but unease. No one dared to laugh now. No one dared to mock. For the first time they had seen what humans did to themselves, what they survived. One of the younger generals broke the silence with a hiss. They destroyed their own world, again and again. Yet they endure. Another leaned closer, his claws tapping nervously against the table. This is madness. No species should survive such ruin. Entire planets fall with far less. The warlord did not answer. His burning eyes stayed locked on Elias Kane, who stood calmly in the center of the chamber. The human silence was louder than any speech. Elias finally spoke, his tone steady. You conquer with fleets and fire. You crush worlds and enslave races who have never known true suffering. But humans, we have already been crushed. By ourselves. By our own hands. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the council. And still, we rose. The aliens shifted uncomfortably. Memories of their past conquests filled their minds. Worlds that surrendered without resistance, species that begged for mercy. But here stood a man whose kind had no mercy to give, not even to themselves. One of the counselors slammed his claw against the table. Lies. You show us images, but this proves nothing. Weakness is still weakness. If you destroyed yourselves, once you will destroy yourselves again. Elias's calm eyes turned toward him. Yes, he said quietly. We will. That is who we are. But we will return again. And again. Until nothing in this galaxy remains strong enough to break us. The words fell like a hammer on stone. A ripple of dread moved through the council. Another elder alien spoke, his voice lower now, uncertain. Warlord, if they have survived such ruin, what will they do against us? Against our armies? The warlord's jaw tightened. His arrogance struggled against the creeping chill inside him. He rose from his throne, towering above them all. They are only human, he growled. Fragile, short-lived. They cannot stand against an empire of 1,000 worlds. But the weight of his words was weaker than before. The fire of his certainty dimmed. Elias stepped forward, his boots echoing on the cold stone floor. He spoke, softly, but every word carried power. Your empire has never faced an enemy like us. You win by breaking hope, but we have already lived without hope. You win by burning cities, but we have already walked in ashes. Tell me, warlord, what do you threaten us with when we have already suffered worse by our own hands? The council chamber grew colder. Some of the aliens lowered their eyes. Others whispered to each other in fear. For the first time, the galaxy's rulers felt something they had not known in centuries. Doubt. And in that doubt, fear began to grow. The turning point. The silence in the chamber was sharp, heavy like a blade pressed against the skin. The council of conquerors, once so loud in their laughter, now shifted uneasily in their seats. Their glowing eyes no longer held arrogance, only confusion and doubt. The warlord's claws curled against the armrest of his throne. His armor clinked as he leaned forward, glaring at the human commander. Yet even his stare had lost some of its fire. "You show us ruins," the warlord said, his deep voice echoing across the hall. "You parade your scars as if they are trophies. But scars are proof of wounds. Wounds prove weakness. You cannot frighten us with broken history." Elias Kane did not flinch. He stood tall, his shoulders square, his eyes unshaken. His voice came out calm, measured, and steady. But the words pierced deeper than any blade. "You are wrong. Scars do not prove weakness, they prove survival." The chamber trembled with murmurs. The alien counselors looked at each other, their scales shifting with unease. None dared to laugh now. Elias stepped closer to the center, his boots echoing like thunder on the stone floor. His voice grew sharper, stronger. "You call yourselves rulers of 1,000 worlds. You sit on thrones built by fear. But your enemies fall because they have never known true suffering. They break easily, they bend, they kneel." His eyes narrowed. "Humans do not kneel. Not forever. We kneel only to rise higher." The words hung heavy in the chamber. Some aliens shifted uncomfortably, their claws tapping nervously on the table. The warlord's jaw tightened. He slammed his fist against the throne, the sound like a crash of stone. "Enough of this," he roared. "You speak like a conqueror, but you are only prey. You think your scars make you dangerous? You think your pain makes you powerful? You are still human, fragile and short-lived." But his roar failed to shake Elias. The commander's calm voice sliced through the warlord's fury. "Yes, we are fragile. Yes, we are short-lived. And yet look at us. We built empires with hands that bleed. We walked through fire and did not vanish. We are the species that destroys itself, and still comes back stronger." A hush fell over the council. The younger aliens stared in disbelief, the older ones in dread. They saw no desperation in the human's face, only certainty. The warlord rose to his full height, towering above the chamber. Yet for the first time, his shadow seemed smaller. His grin was gone, his certainty cracked. Deep inside, he felt the faintest tremor of something he had not known in centuries: fear. Elias Kane looked straight into his glowing eyes. His voice dropped lower, softer, yet more terrifying than any roar. "You think you know war, warlord. You think you know strength. But you have never faced an enemy who has already defeated himself and still stood tall. That is what we are. That is what humanity is." The chamber froze. The words were not a shout, not a threat, but a truth that no one could escape. The warlord's claws gripped his throne tighter. For the first time, the galaxy's conqueror realized something that made his blood run cold. The human was not here to beg. He was here to warn, and that truth terrified him more than any weapon ever could. The chamber was heavy with silence. The alien council, once so proud and loud, now sat frozen in unease. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, but their arrogance was gone. They stared at the lone human standing before them, calm, unshaken, unbroken. Elias Kane slowly stepped forward. Each echo of his boots against the stone floor sounded like a drumbeat of doom. His shadow stretched long beneath the council's cold blue light. The warlord leaned forward, his claws gripping the throne. His voice was harsh, but it carried cracks now, like steel about to break. "You think your words will save you? You think your history frightens us? Speak your last, human, before I end your defiance." Elias did not raise his voice. He did not shout or argue. He only looked straight into the warlord's burning eyes. His lips parted slightly, and he whispered words that carried more weight than any weapon. "We are the species that dies and comes back stronger." The chamber froze. The words hung in the air, sharp and cold as a blade. One of the younger generals hissed, shifting in his seat. Another counselor lowered his gaze, unable to meet the human's eyes. The sound of nervous claws tapping against the table filled the silence. Elias took another step forward. His whisper grew softer, but its strength deepened. You have crushed worlds, but never one that has already crushed itself. You have burned cities, but never one that has already walked through fire. You cannot threaten us with death. We already know it better than you. The warlord's grin was gone. His chest tightened as if invisible hands pressed against him. For centuries he had ruled through fear, but now he was the one who felt it. Elias's final words came like a ghostly wind, barely louder than breath, yet the entire council heard them. Tell me, warlord, who is weak now? The silence was unbearable. Even the hum of the chamber's machines seemed to die. The aliens sat frozen, their arrogance shattered, their fear growing like a shadow that could not be escaped. And, in that silence, the human's whisper thundered louder than any war cry. The aftermath. The chamber was drowned in silence. The human's whisper still hung in the air like smoke from a fire that would never fade. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the sound of breath seemed too loud in that moment. The alien counselors, once proud rulers of 1,000 worlds, sat frozen. Their glowing eyes no longer carried arrogance, but something they had not known in centuries: fear. Some looked at each other, their scaled hands trembling. Others lowered their heads, unable to meet the gaze of the lone human who stood unbroken. Before them, Elias Kane did not move. He did not smile, nor boast. His calmness was more terrifying than any roar. He had shown them not weapons, not armies, not fleets, but the truth of humanity. And that truth was heavier than fire and steel. One of the younger generals finally broke. His voice trembled as he hissed, "Warlord, this is no ordinary prey. They are monsters in disguise." Another counselor leaned back, his claws tapping nervously. If they have survived such ruin, such endless death, how do we defeat them? How do we conquer those who cannot be broken? The whispers spread like a storm. Fear crawled across the chamber walls. The empire that thrived on intimidation now felt its own throne shaking beneath it. The warlord's claws dug deep into his throne. His glowing eyes flickered with conflict. He wanted to roar, to silence them all, to destroy the human where he stood. But deep inside, he could not shake the image of Earth rising from ashes, again and again. He could not silence the truth that no empire, no weapon, no fire could destroy a species that had already destroyed itself, and lived. Slowly, the warlord lowered his head. His voice, once thunder, now cracked like stone breaking. Perhaps humanity is not weak. The council fell into deeper silence. The words were an admission, a surrender far heavier than defeat. Elias Kane's eyes never left the warlord. His voice came once more, steady and final. We are not asking for mercy. We are not asking for peace. We are only reminding you we are still here. And as long as humanity breathes, the galaxy will never forget us. With that, he turned. His boots echoed one last time across the stone floor as he walked out of the chamber. He did not need guards, nor allies, nor weapons. His presence alone was enough to leave the galaxy's conquerors broken in silence. Behind him, the alien council sat unmoving, their power shaken, their arrogance shattered. They had mocked humanity. They had laughed at weakness. But now, they understood the truth. The species they called fragile was the one they feared most.